Farma. It was founded in Farma was founded in 2009, and it is dedicated to herbal solutions and
FDA, hem GMP.
both ISO, FDA, and GNP certificates are held by the company for supplements. And this is something really rare for such companies. So our production is up to pharmaceutical grade. So why are we here today?
Hepinizin çok iyi bildiği
Of
gibi bir
course, as you all know, we're still in the COVID-19 pandemic process. And after that, we will have the post-COVID period. And more importantly, we're hoping that we won't catch the disease and we return to our jobs, our schools, and despite vaccination, distancing, and masks, we will still have to protect ourselves. And how will the existing experience shed light upon the solutions, and what could be the effect mechanisms of the existing solutions? Of course, there are products in several different
hem bundan
categories. We
koruyan iki
discuss
tane
cold mix and Bacto Bliss, two products protecting one from the nose and the other from the mouth. They are known to you, I know, but there are indications and new clinical insights and new clinical benefits discovered. So we will discuss those all together. So we will look at clinical results, and we will make a launch of the two products, so to say. And we have very valuable professors and speakers, and I'm really impatient to give them the floor. We have our moderator, a very experienced person in the field of pharmacy, Adile Özdağ. I'd like to give the floor to her now.
Evet. Herkese merhaba, hoş geldiniz.
Yes, hello everyone and welcome. Mr. Kartal, we had already worked together with you, and you have come back to us with Farma, and we wish you success in your new position.
Salgınında yeni bir döneme girdik.
We have entered a new era in the coronavirus or COVID-19 process. While you are dealing with your patients, lots of people are hoping that they will right away take off their masks and whether they should get vaccinated or not. And we're trying to convince them to get vaccinated. We're trying to convince them that the danger is not over yet. However, quite frankly, people are, of course, bored with this whole thing, and they're right to feel bored. And in pharmacies, we can observe that people are frightened people were frightened to go to hospitals, but we tried to calm them down. We tried to find solutions to their problems, and they could even reach us by the phone at nighttime, and we gave them all the information that was available to us that we had, and whenever we could not answer their questions, we established contact with you. So this COVID-19 pandemic taught all of us how important health is, and I hope this will never be forgotten. Of course, we had many people passed away, and this was really very sad for all of us. Now, this last process of reopening is very important, and we can feel this in our pharmacies because people were so bored, they were sick and tired of this, and they had economic problems, they had mental problems, physical problems, and their anxiety levels are way overboard. But I think our advantage is that vaccination rates are as high as they were never before. And I think this is an advantage that we're happy about now. Although there are opposers to vaccination in general, we can see that there is a high rate of vaccination. I am one of pro-vaccination people, together with Mr. Serhat Gaye, Ateş, and Alper would also know. I tried to get all the information concerning vaccination, its benefits, and try to disseminate that. We tried to convince people into getting vaccinated. In flu vaccines, as you know, we were in the past doing very well, but due to state policies and the fact that the number of vaccines being brought into Turkey remained low, the success rate dropped. So we pharmacists always try to convince people, saying as follows: these are the kinds of vaccines that were studied a lot. We had SARS and MERS before the COVID-19 pandemic. So if there were deaths in anywhere around the world, there would never be studies being established so fast. But as many people were dying all around the world, in Germany, in France, in the US, vaccination studies gained a great impetus. And I'm sure scientists will elaborate on their pros and cons, but we always tell that protection comes first. Of course, masks, distancing, and hygiene are the three important measures. However, we also have arguments to help us protect ourselves. Of course, we will distance ourselves, but oral and nasal hygiene, general cleanliness, sleep patterns, and coping with stress, methods of coping with stress, they all add up to a good lifestyle, which will ultimately help us protect ourselves. As the Ministry of Health said, we have an important weapon in our hands, which will allow us not to catch the disease. So the first aim should be not to contract the disease, because as the process evolves, new methods and new information roll in. And things are changing. Some people are having a very severe disease. In high socioeconomic segments of the society, both for doctors and pharmacists, there are some disadvantages which are prevailing. As there are several opportunities for treatment, people say, oh, somewhere else in the world, this is not what they're prescribing, or this is not the type of treatment they are offering, they say. However, I think it's important that we share with you the ways in which we are trying to cope with this disease with you. Now, Tuğçe Hürkal, Dr. Tuğçe Hürkal is with us, and throughout the process of the disease, we had several contacts with him, and we followed up so many patients together. On my own behalf, I can say that I've really learned a lot in this period. And Professor Erdem Yeşilada and Professor Fatih Demirci, I have been following their I've been following them as they express their opinions, and Professor Ayper Somer, we have always been in contact with you, and Miss Meltem, with the microbiome, you will now enter into people's hearts, and we'll see what will happen. Now, I would like to ask each of you to introduce yourselves with just a couple of words. Hello. Thank you very much, Ms. Costa. I'd also like to thank Farma for their kind invitation. I am a chest diseases specialist, and for 16 years I've been working in this field, and I'm also working with the support of allergy and immunology, and I had a short period of intensive care service. So I was one of the doctors who worked really hard in the field of COVID recently. Unfortunately, we cannot hear the speaker. Okay, where are we and where are we heading now? Was the question to me? I couldn't hear you, the speaker says. So, what's happening in the post-COVID period? What's about to change? And what will happen? What happens after the vaccination? What happens in a long COVID? Just make an introduction. As of today, it has been more than 600 days since COVID first became a phenomenon. And looking at the starting point in treatment and follow-up, in terms of follow-up panels, we have lots of parameters available. However, in treatment, we are just turning in the same loop within the same loop. And recently, we have seen that in the follow-up of viral infections, it is very difficult to attain a level of standardization in different sexes and in different backgrounds and structures. We have to first individualize the training. In the last 2 years, we have understood this, and the protection methods and methods of contracting the disease, ways of contracting the disease are several, but the oral and nasal cavities are the primary sources, and our biggest weapon are vaccines. Therefore, with vaccination, the increase in immunity levels help us be more strong in the field in treatment, and antibody protection is not enough. And this in these days, we are asking the question whether we are about to experience the fourth wave. And as of the end of June, we will have completed 6 months after the 2-dose vaccines have been completed in many of the healthcare professionals, and most countries started vaccination by the end of December, beginning of January. And countries like Britain have completed mostly their 2-dose vaccinations. And when vaccination is beyond the 6-month point, we can see the disease contracting index. And this kind of disappoints us. And this is actually why people say that the fourth wave might be coming, and mutations are influential in this. In crowded countries like Brazil, South Africa, and India, where immunization is not complete, this viral load, which is highly mobile, gets mutations, especially after a couple of people contracting the disease, and where international transportation is intensive and where borders are not well guarded, there will be a danger. And the new Indian mutation, which is the Delta virus, has been seen in 71 countries and also very slowly in Turkey. And we can see some cases in hospitals as well. Therefore, it's very important for us to prevent the disease in non-vaccinated population as well as the vaccinated population. I always worked with the 70 to 75-year age group. And 80 pluses, 90 pluses, I already had lots of them as well. And when you have old age patients, you have to have a sound knowledge of the immune system so that you can manage the disease with not polypharmacy, but as few medications, with as few medications as possible. And the main parameter was this for me in all my treatment plans. As Meltem will also say, microflora and microbiota are not two new things. For many years, I had always looked at that, but the gut and the stomach are very important for the flora. We always thought that the lungs were sterile, the lower respiratory tract, so to say, but I think clinicians have gained a certain level of knowledge in this, and preventive lung health has been foregrounded. Therefore, the nasal and oral cavity are very important, starting from mouth hygiene with the aging mouth, especially in viral infections, there is a serious problem. And in kindergarten and primary school children, as well as indirectly their parents, we have a seasonal transitional period, and we get infections in the whole family. So the infection comes into the country starting from the child, and it infects all the family members. So what can we do in the field of lung protective approach? The lungs are not much affected by what you eat, but rather it's affected by the air that you breathe in. So these general barriers have to be put up, have to be strengthened for the sake of general immunity. The mucus and the sputum in the mouth and the sputum in the lungs are very important. And lots of agents are being tried. For example, if you take this in from the mouth or the nose, would it protect me? This is the question that is posed to us the most, especially by airline passengers. And we used to reply this with some kind of a reservation, but with the COVID-19 infection pandemic, there was a huge influx of information, and so we can now see with a correct oral and nasal hygiene, whenever there is infection in the family, one of the family members, you can still protect other members. This makes me happy because, of course, people will get antibody and humoral protection. Well, they can get humoral protection after contracting the disease, but there will also be cellular barriers or cellular immunity in place. So we will have sound protection. And in lung health, what we are learning, what we have learned in the coronavirus pandemic is that immunity has a great role. an indispensable role. The COVID-19 infection and the Delta strain, the Indian mutant, which is prevailing now, but there might be another mutation shortly after this. So all viral infections that infect through droplets will become a danger for us, a threat for us. Therefore, preventive lung health will be even much more important in the upcoming period. So this has to do with the COVID-19 process, and the disease does not end in days. And when people are faced with the enveloped virus, with the inflammation process being triggered, there are post-COVID reactions, and they may last 3 months or 12 weeks. And all the assessments show that when a patient is faced with the coronavirus infection, there might still be post-COVID reactions within 9 months. And which organs are being affected by this? Taking a general look at this in the literature and in our patients, there are almost no organs which are not affected. If you include the viral load shedding and starting from the eyes, nose, etc., the vessel systems, the gastrointestinal system, the urogenital system, sex hormones, everything is affected. And this shows how great the repercussions of the infection are in the body. And this causes a very intense post-COVID picture with alveolar fibrosis and very severe neuropathies, for example, very severe cognitive process disorders, and especially short-term memory problems. Although I have been dealing with allergy and immunology for so long, I have never seen before such rashes, etc. Yes, of course, these are temporary effects, but the post-COVID process is independent from the age, sex, whatever, and it might manifest itself within 6 months. And unfortunately, there is an inflammatory reaction and the extra and the non-lung symptoms may also show themselves, and it is really scary in mutations. We have recently begun to see that in mutations. And will this end, and when will it end? Yes, we are all vaccinated with the inactive vaccine, but how long will this protect us?
Kısaca bir paylaşımda bulunmam gerekirse, uluslararası çok sayıda hasta görüyorum. Bunun çok farklı ülkelere ait, yaklaşık minimum 400 ila 550 hasta boyutunda ülke
I see almost 500 patients, and there are different vaccination groups, but they are also having long enrollment despite the fact that they are vaccinated. So that is a vicious circle. We come back to the starting point. The less we are exposed to the virus burden, the better the situation will be. So the less exposure is the less complications and less additional diseases. That is the most important. Here, the key is the mechanical effects should be broken. So as specialists, we would like to say to people that they should make sure that they keep the distance with others. But that cannot be enough. Despite the masks, the virus can still reach you. So that is by alone is not enough. Therefore, we need good immunization and healthy diet. I know I might sound funny, but we need to be sure that we are exposed to reasonable stress. As you might know, even traffic can create a high stress in lives. So what can we do? What else can we do without receiving any toxic material into our body? How we can make it stronger? Well, probiotics can be an option, and that's why we are actually making a search about that. As far as I can tell you that this session is going to be very, very informative for all of us. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the nice talk. I believe that the questions will be received later on because certainly we will have a question and answer session. Really, there are people having a variety of problems, and people will receive their questions once they come. Miss Aypeş, let's listen from your side. How is COVID on the children's side? And what are the effects of protection? As you know, the schools are open. Good evening. First of all, I am very pleased to deliver a presentation in front of that group. We know quite well about the problems among adults, but it's better we also take a look at children as well. I am the president of the Children Health Department of Istanbul University Hospital. And actually, since the beginning of COVID, we've come across this problem among children as well. Actually, I will look at the situation from a child doctor perspective. I have a presentation to share with you. I think you can see my presentation. The virus effects among children and the importance of protection. Children is among the age groups which are affected the most against the viruses. Since the beginning of COVID, we estimated that the situation would be like that. We thought that the first target would be children, but that was not the case. There are a variety of viruses affecting the children. When we say upper respiratory infection, there are many viruses which lead to over 200 doctor visits every year in every 1,000 population. And also it affects almost 50 million adults, and they also go to doctors for that. And a child can be exposed to 3 to 8 times viruses, 3 to 8 times. And of course, 90% of the children are having sinus effect. Tonsillitis, otitis, sinusitis, and bronchiolitis are among the infections that affect the children. Well, frequently, coughing and fever are important symptoms of virus infection among children. The children's immune system is not totally developed. As you know, the children do not have a total hygiene, and that's why a child is having 3 to 6 times of virus infection every year until the age 6. So we start with an antibiotic and then we change it, we disconnect it, and then again we have to start it over. So in the adolescent age, the frequency of virus infection decreases, and at the ages of adult, the frequency is decreasing even further. In September, October, and November, generally the bronchiolitis do not appear, but it appears generally before January, and then influenza starts as of January. Influenza, when it comes, the other viruses go back to their corners because influenza is kind of an emperor virus. Coronavirus is actually a different type, and it is coincide with influenza in terms of time. Adenovirus, after the infection, there was an immune system, and that effect would last over 1 year. However, the antibody response would not appear. In that respect, the people would be able to have parainfluenza for up to 6 to 8 times. And actually, the community origin viruses would be effective in almost 30 to 40%, by 40%. And pneumonia was also an effect which were severe among the children. Well, the classical story started in Wuhan, China, and in 2020, there was an international emergency announcement, and then the first case appeared in March 11th in 2020 in Turkey. And in Shenzhen, China, the first pediatric case appeared. As you know, that is the latest situation. There is over 177 million confirmed cases, and you can see the death rate. So the mortality is 2%. Globally, which is quite high. Well, that is not certain, as people say. That is only the upper part of the iceberg, and the people say that the numbers are 10 times higher than reported. That is the latest situation reflecting Turkey. The case number is not below 5,000 still. However, the number of deaths is decreasing. The mortality is 0.9%, which is lower than the global rate. That is the wave in Turkey. That's the first one, and the third wave showed the peak in April, and we are expecting the fourth wave with fear. Can a child have COVID-19? Yes, of course they can, and we actually see they have COVID between the age 12 and 14. The researchers show that 1% of the population infected is children, and that is sometimes higher in other cities. So only 15% of the infected population are children. 6% of all the children cases are hospitalized, and some of them are receiving intensive care. So that is totally different profile compared to adult. So by race, we can say that the Asian races and the Black races are hospitalized at a higher rate. The rate of effect is almost the same between boys and girls. Well, actually, China created a lot of misinterpretation in many aspects. As you see, these are the virus infection between by age group among children. And it seems like that created a panic, and we actually targeted the children under the age 1. And then the American data came, as you see, 15.5% among the entire population, as appear on the screen. This shows the data from Turkey, and that shows the data until July 2020. The latest data is not at hand because we have not received it from the ministry yet. However, we can say that 8.9% of the population are children, and 67% of the child population infected are among the age 15 and 18. So it's like we have no longer have the case. However, we still have, not because of COVID, but because of the kidney deficiency. We are talking about the aged children indeed. And actually, presymptomatic cases are higher than the asymptomatic cases. So these three groups represent 90% of the infected children. As I told before, the severe manifestation is not too frequent. So totally, I only lost 4 patients. 2 of them were COVID, and the other 2 had immune deficiency. So that is the first paper showing that in Turkey. This table shows the cases in Turkey. So it represents over 1,000 children cases. So the gender rate is almost the same. And those who are infected by COVID has underlying lung diseases. So the case group is a little bit different than the adult groups. 51% of the children population are symptomatic, and the main symptoms include fever, coughing, and actually the coughing is manifested more frequently if the age is over 15. And that is what I want to show. This is a neutrophil, an erythrocyte, and that shows the smallest particle filtered by the mask. So the virus is far smaller than many types of blood cells. The most important thing is that once it is received by the cell, there is a replication and translation happening. The most important point here, as Tuğçe said, the cytokine storm. And this is triggered by IL-6, and the inflammatory process starts, which is quite important. Not only 6, but 18, 33, and TNF alpha, and a lot of chemokines are important. And the cytokine storm, which is frequently seen in adult, is not seen among children. Generally, the problems appear depending on and based on the lung involvement. These are the comparison of the cytokine concentrations between adults and children. T lymphocyte response is stronger among adults. And the children show a higher reaction to many viruses, but show less reaction to COVID virus. So the infection happens through droplets. Especially if the distance is less than 2 meters, the droplets are quite effective in terms of infection. What is important is the size of the droplets and aerosol. Aerosol is also quite dangerous. However, aerosol is not really an effective means for for the infection. Generally coughing, maybe singing, and also talking at a louder voice or sound, staying in indoor places are the main reasons for the infection. Why it is important to wear the mask in outdoor environment? I really don't know. We know that the infection doesn't happen with food. Vertical infection and also infection from the mother. Actually, there is no bad case reported about that. I have to say that this is a very sensitive virus, quite resistant, but how are the children infected generally? The main infection means is the adult. So the source is the adult. Influenza is the other way around. Generally, the influenza is received from child, and however, in COVID-19, the situation is the other way around. So the students, the teachers, probably they are also infecting one another, but the main source is always the adult. So the adult is the source for infection, and then the child receives it from the adult and actually hands it over to the other children. So a majority of the children are infected after their parents are infected. So first the grandmother, grandfather, or the main parents are infected, and then lastly the child is getting infected. So can the children actually carry COVID-19 virus to others? There is no clear answer for that. The virus burden is almost the same with the adult. The children, specifically the small children, are rarely carrying the virus. But if the child is over 10 years of age, then their rate of infection or probability of infecting others is higher.
So, COVID-19 is a new virus, and is there a mechanism that allows the virus to find host for itself? And in children, coughing and sneezing is less, and children usually don't speak at a high voice, etc., and therefore they do not cause infections that much. And there are variable infection rates. For example, infection of the household people is rare. But there may be some problems, such as mistakes in collecting the samples. And if masks are worn, of course, there is no infection from children. In Spain, 70% of the pediatric cases contracted the disease from an infected family member. So let us not put the blame on children. And in only 7.7% is the index case, the child. So it is decided that children are a very low force in causing the infection to spread. And with due education, by wearing masks and hygiene methods, there will be very little infection from children. In infectious COVID-19 period, that is to say 24 hours before the onset of the symptoms, 12 children contacted 752 people, and only if in 3 of them a secondary infection was found. Is this a very high number? Of course, no. In the US, according to this study published in December, it's indeed a study which was conducted in many countries when masks were worn and when there were some classification made, there were very few infections from children. In many countries, there is no vaccination for children between the ages of 12 and 18. The incubation period is between 5 to 6 days, and it is dispersed between the second and the 14th days. And uh, immune deficiency can take place up to 30 days, but this doesn't mean being able to infect somebody. If a person is asymptomatic, can they infect other people? Some children may be pre-symptomatic and they may cause infection. And there is a vagueness as concerns this situation. Heart disease, neurological diseases, etc. There is a huge list of symptoms and risk factors. And according to the data collected in Turkey, there are 100 children who died. The biggest cause is Down syndrome and obesity, metabolic diseases, and in cancer cases, there is an increased risk. This is a newborn from our hospital. Why are children being infected less? Because children went out less, they don't travel internationally that much, and parents are really excessively sensitive about the health of their children. Whenever they see a single symptom, they rush to the hospital. They come to us whenever they have a fever, whenever they have a cough. And children have a more healthy respiratory system. They don't smoke, and they are being protected because they are not exposed to cigarette smoke. But children have a lower immune response, and there are protection mechanisms against lung damage. The innate immune system, the natural immune system, is very strong in children. This is something which is very important. By age, it is reduced. When a foreign virus comes to the body, uh, uh, we as adults cannot establish the first barriers. However, in children, these initial barriers are very high, and they have a very strong innate immune system. And that is the reason why there is a higher number of cases between the age group, in the age group 10 to 18. Unfortunately, this is a messy picture, and there might be pain, stomach pain, etc. Unfortunately, I had to go too fast. Oh, is it possible to be protected from viral infections and COVID-19? In autumn, there are hopes that vaccination may be initiated for children under 2 years of age. No masks are recommended, and some studies even say it is harmful before the age of 4. Of course, vitamins, immune modulators, and probiotics can be used, and oral and nasal cleaning are important criteria. Oh, is there a problem with the slides? I think you have turned back to the beginning of your presentation. Can you still see the presentation? Yes. Now, last but not least, I will talk about respiratory tract probiotics in children. I think it will be talked about in a few minutes, but Bactobilis, which contains Streptococcus salivarius K2, it has effect on Streptococcus pyogenes, Baraxella, etc., and it produces antimicrobial matter. It has a more controlled pH release. It has an effect on the immune system, and it's really a very promising probiotic. But interferon gamma, the amount of it in the is increased, and it is the first barrier. And when there is a reduced amount of interleukin 8, thanks to its effect, cytokine storms are prevented. They also keep the respiratory tract epithelium ready for any possible infections. Streptococcal pharyngitis and in otitis media, it was found effective. Under the age of 3, for 6 months in kindergarten children, 18 drugs. There were 18 children in the treatment group and 54 children in the control group, and it was found to be effective. And relapse attacks, recurrent attacks were prevented in tonsillopharyngitis. According to, compared to the control group, the number was lower. And in streptococcal tonsillopharyngitis, between 3 and 13 years of age, for 19 days, treatment was given, and there were 61 children in the treatment group, and the attack numbers they reduced by 80%, and in the control group this only remained at 14%. Bacterial infections due to Streptococcus pyogenes were reduced by up to 97%, and the need for use of antibiotics and absence from school were reduced. The most recent on COVID-19 and oral microbiota relationship. There were meta-analyses, and then there were experimental studies. Last but not least, there was one study which I'd like to talk about. SARS-CoV-2 enters the body from the mouth, as you know, and COVID-19 patients have a different oral bacteria content and inflammatory profile when compared to other healthy people. This means the oral microbiota is the primary source for the lung microbiota. And when there is a dysbiosis in the oral microbiota, there is a dysbiosis in the lung microbiota. Streptococcus salivarius in these individuals is one of the commensal species, and interferon gamma release is stimulated, and therefore it has a direct antiviral activity, and it protects upper respiratory tract from infections. In a study conducted on 4 adults, after giving Streptococcus salivarius K2 strain, interferon gamma measurements were made, and in the first 8 hours, there is no release of interferon gamma, but there is a peak on the 24th hour, and in viral infections, this is what is desired. There is a release in the first 48 hours. The viruses, when they enter the body, this is what happens. And this is a study in a pediatric population. It was published in March 2021. In 2020 in Milan, in the times when COVID-19 was having a peak, half of school children were given Streptococcus salivarius K12 or placebo. And for those with a history of contact or symptoms, respiratory symptoms, a PCR test was carried out. And when there were complaints such as fever or cough, tests were carried out. And in 46 children, they had to have a test. And in the treatment group, there was no PCR positivity, and treatment compliance was very high. In the treatment group, the number is 0, and in the control group, it is 24 SARS-CoV-2 positivity. And this shows that especially the prophylactic use of Bactoblis has a considerable effect in children who go to school or the kindergarten, in professionals who work in hospitals, offices, and people who travel. You can use it. In recurrent upper respiratory tract infections, you can use it throughout the whole period, or you can use it for 90 days. In viral respiratory tract infections, you can use it for 14 days, or after a tonsillitis, you can use it for 90 days, and once per day after brushing the teeth before bed. And these preparations, well, the disturbance of the microbiome balance causes infections, and the importance of microbiota is being gradually better understood. So Bactoblis will be the first probiotic agent in protecting against respiratory tract infections. And in COVID-19 prophylaxis, there are positive results as regards Bactoblis. So I want to look at the future with hope. As I said last year to students, in 1 or 2 years' time, we have a viral respiratory panel of 14 items, and rhinovirus, parainfluenza are seen more, and we have RSV and adenovirus. Coronavirus is on a decline. This happened after 1.5 years. So rhinovirus might be the new threat if a new coronavirus doesn't appear. And of course, for us, it's very important to strengthen the immune system. What protects children is the barriers, the nose and the mouth, and innate immunity. Probiotics can also help us in achieving that. Sorry for going beyond the time allocated to me. Ms. Ayfer, thank you very much for this valuable information. Yes, in children, we were happy saying that it did not affect children, and we thought that it kind of excluded children. However, later on, something happened, and for children, we prescribe antibiotics and cough syrups. So for 1 year, we did not sell any of them almost. And they all went beyond the last date, their last date, expiry dates. We used to sell lots of Calpol, lots of cough syrup. So this means masks are really effective because adults wear their masks, and the children did not go to school, and they were protected from one another. Therefore, we almost had no influenza virus cases. Even asthmatic patients, when compared with the previous years, there was even a reduction in the number of asthma medications that we sold, and there is only an increase in sales nowadays. Yes, Mr. Yeşilada, Mr. Erdem Yeşilada, how are you? I think you all know him very well. You need to work hard. You will need to work hard yet. So many complaints come from people, and some of them can be resolved with herbal supplements. But you and Fatih will have to work more, this means. In the post-COVID period, there are problems of libido and muscle weakness, and I'm sure you will have to work on this.
Evet. Tekrar merhaba.
Well, I would like to say good evening. My name is Erdem Yeşilada from the Pharmacy Faculty of Yeditepe University. I work in the domain of phytotherapy, the health values of plants, their contents, and their analysis. Generally, I am searching about the pharmacological effects of these. We listened to the presentation of Ms. Ayper. She said one thing, the infections are getting more important. Historically, the biggest problem of humankind was pandemics. Starting from the early times of human history, specifically when we come to the Russian influenza, all the pandemics originated from the viruses, and then came the bird influenza, so every 130 years, the humankind actually are exposed to such large-scale pandemics, and a high number of people are killed by them. So as Ms. Ayper said, there is a report of OECD starting from last March. All the infections disappeared except COVID-19. That is what Ms. Ayper said in the presentation. So majority of the products just stayed, and the expiry dates of all these products actually reached, were exceeded. All the other viruses are not on holiday. Of course, they just disappeared. But once we take off the masks, they will attack, of course. And we have learned one thing, which is protection. Protection is quite important. That is lesson one learned by us. Generally, in spring times, or in times where the infections are dominant, people wore masks. I'm talking about the other countries, but still in Turkey, the people are reluctant to wear the mask, or they just wear it but keep it under their chin. You said that there is loss of libido in very important journals. Fertility is affected a lot, specifically among the male patients, and they are affected by coronavirus. And I think even that result does not provoke people to wear masks. So how can we protect ourselves from such and similar viruses? I think the protection of life is a matter of chess playing. Protecting health is quite important, that's for sure. However, if you don't play your chess, if you don't play chess effectively and in a good manner, you will of course be beaten. But what is important here is to delay the time of being beaten, or try to gain time to win. So in the nature, there is a cure for every disease. Uh, and in the last decade, there has been a great development, and what is also very clear is that the nature is a specialist in synergy. So the materials are affecting each other. Once we solve the interaction of different materials with one another, there will be no disease uncured. So prophylactic solutions, or the other one, which is more important for protecting ourselves. So the oronasal area region is the gateway to the body, and that area should be well protected. Hygiene and masks are enough for that or not? We have seen that masks are not enough to protect the gateway to the body, because of course we do take off, we do actually take off the mask at certain times, for example, while eating your meal. Therefore, additional precautions are necessary to protect ourselves. How are they proliferated? How are bacteria proliferated? Let's look at that. Actually, there was no antimicrobial agent stronger than antibiotics before. And they should be used properly. And in the last 3 decades, there is no new antibiotics discovered. There are only derivations of the older versions. So we have second and third generations of antibiotics with a higher resistance compared to past. And there are some pessimistic papers appearing in our area, saying that unless new antibiotics are discovered, new infections will come and find us. So that is quite thrilling. It sounds so, but actually, to my point of view, this should be taken care of. Actually, the quorum sensing is a perception system. It is like a system to perceive your surrounding. So these are gram negatives, and these are the lactons, and the gram-positive bacteria are oligopeptides, and gram-positive and negatives are Bohr-structured autoinductives. So that means they come to a place and they synthesize and releases some molecules. And the others are also saying that we are here as well, and they release their respective molecules, and through molecules they do communicate with one another, as if we communicate with one another over WhatsApp. So that's why this communication channel should be blocked, should be obstructed, and that's why anti-quorum sensing is the key here. The other important thing that has been discovered is the situation in the oral area. So the microorganism comes, enters through the mouth, and you do drink water, you eat meal, and that's why the bacteria cannot stay there longer. And that's why the glucons are converted to fructons, and they actually hide into them, and they do actually grow there. They do sometimes release new messengers in their surrounding, and those messengers are actually reaching to our different places in order to create infection. So anti-quorum sensing is one way actually, and then the other way is the prevention of biofilms. For example, you might like sweet food, however, there should not be sweet leftovers in your mouth, or otherwise those bacteria convert them into new things which make them grow further. So the bacteria it can be extracellular or intracellular, and as you see in this part, they become inactive. They become active and they get into the cell and lead to an infection. And their rate of growth is amazingly high. So in 5 hours, they can proliferate up to 3 million. So depending on the temperature of the body, of course. So viruses, on the other side, how are they proliferated? How do they proliferate? Well, we are accustomed to them. The spike protein viruses are new images in our minds. They never leave us. They are always in our imagination. So that is the scenario about the influenza virus. That is the cell, and there is the sialic acid receptor, and they are bound over that. And once the time comes for disconnection, the neuraminidase comes in, and it is released from the receptor, and then disconnection happens, and then release starts. So what we need is the neuraminidase inhibitors to overcome this disconnection. So SARS-CoV, the gateway is primarily ACE2. Well, that was a big concern at the very beginning because the people thought that it was in the lung at first sight and then in the mouth. So that's why the people even tried to change their medications, their high tension medications. So there are two gateways, ACE2 and TMP. So once they come in, they do disseminate, and then other viruses, small viruses appear, and they do disseminate the smaller viruses to cause an infection. So the plants, how can I prevent that process? Well, plants can really provide us with effective results therapeutically. Scientific researchers show that phenolic compounds, like some skins of the fruits, the propolis, the green tea, vanillin. So these are amazing structures. And there are also volatile compounds like the carvacrol, eucalyptus, and sage, and also the clove. These are the main compounds. There are also they are also available in licorice. So the volatile compounds are very key, and we have to learn how to combine them for using them. So how can the essential oils help us? First of all, those essential oils are effective on ACE2 and TMPRSS2. And some portion of those essential oils are effective over the replication. Not too much, but at least they are effective. And that's why essential oils are quite effective in preventing the virus come into the cell. So the kinases, actually inhibitors plays a role over the kinases because the kinases kinases in the body and the reactive oxygen types, all of them trigger the kinase structures inside IKK and MAPK. And then the nuclear factor kappa B, and in the end, they do release the inflammatory cytokines. As you see, those are either effective on MAPK and IKK, and they also have antioxidant efficacy. So this way they are decreasing the number of cytokines, and they do effective on the inhibition. That is a research recently released, and that is testing the essential oils and their effect on the ACE2 inhibitors. And they have used campan, the eucalyptus and limonene oils and geraniol oils, and also carvacrol and the ogenol oils are in the forefront in this specific research. And as we have seen, that shows how they are bound to the receptors, and that is mainly tested over the rosemary and the eucalyptus. And as you see, that is shown with the ducting system. So according to the research results, cineol, how can it be effective? It is a very strong antimicrobial. So they are effective on viruses and microbes. So that is not only effective on the viruses. Actually, it is thinning. It is actually making the mucus thinner, and it loosens the mucus. And they do prevent the spasm. And they have neurorelaxant effect too. So that is the other literature. That is a probable area of use of cineol, rhinosinusitis, bronchitis, and also bronchial asthma, and also the other pulmonary diseases in COPD. That one is tested on the animals. It is given to the animals intranasal way, and they are given cineol in an intranasal manner. And they do also check out the cytokine numbers in the lungs, and also in the running nose, TNF alpha, interleukins, and all their numbers. The numbers of all these have decreased significantly according to the results of this scientific research. That is also showing the effects of the cineol, and this time it is compared with oseltamivir, In some respects, cineol is shown to be more effective compared to oseltamivir. For example, GPADH shows that it is recovered to normal level with the help of this cineol. In the ICAM, that is also quite apparent. It is recovered to normal levels. That shows it is highly effective. This research shows the values and also statistical results. Influenza virus A, H3N2. Cineol in combination with oseltamivir is used on animals as a topic of research. That is a Victoria type of virus, and cineol was applied with the dose of 120 mg per kg. So that is the normal control, and the placebo shows the cell is dying quite quickly. However, in the combination therapy, that is showing the combination therapy, including cineol and oseltamivir, the cell protection is quite high. So the combination therapy is much more effective than the oseltamivir alone therapy. That shows the cold mix research in an accredited laboratory, and it shows its effect on SARS-CoV-2. According to the research, the virus disappeared by 80% in 5 minutes and 93% in 30 minutes. That means the nasal area is protected quite effectively. So the nasal area is quite important, specifically in terms of ACE2 inhibitor.
İnsanlar üzerinde yapılmış
The
yine.
effect of cineol in rhinosinusitis. 152 acute non-purulent rhinosinusitis patients were given capsules 3 times a day. For 7 days, their symptom scores were followed. In the cineol group, inhibition was 56%, and the placebo group, inhibition was 24.6%. And in headache, trigeminal nerve pressure, general recovery, nasal obstruction reduction, and nasal discharge, etc., were the secondary symptoms in which there was an improvement. In COPD patients, this is a double-blind, multi-centered RCT on 222 COPD patients. Placebo and cineol capsules were compared. It was given 3 times a day in the winter time, and according to placebo, there was an improvement in quality of life, dyspnea, etc. And in acute bronchitis patients, 242 of them, 200 milligrams of enteric capsules of cineol were given, and the bronchitis sum score reduced statistically significantly, and in the frequency of cough, there was considerable reduction. There are also some mixtures, such as myrtol, which contains cineol, and a comparison was made with ambroxol and cefuroxime. There is a placebo group as well. It's a randomized study. Weekly symptom controls were made, and myrtol had the best results. It had a better efficiency when compared to antibiotics. So in acute bronchitis, it is shown as an alternative therapy. In bronchial asthma, this is a randomized study of 12 weeks. First, a 2-month prednisolone treatment was given, and when still continuing the treatment, placebo capsules were given to one group, and cineol capsules were given to the other group, to the treatment group. Every 3 weeks, the steroid dose was reduced by 2.5 milligrams. As a result, in the cineol group, there was a 36% reduction in the cineol group, and in the placebo group, the reduction only remained at 7%. Cineol, of course, has a positive, the question was whether cineol had a positive effect on biofilm formation, and you can see here that it considerably reduces biofilm formation. Camphene is the other component, and alpha-beta pinens. They inhibit bronchospasm, they cause a relaxation of the bronchial tubes, and in COPD patients, pulmonary diseases, they facilitate respiration, and they facilitate expectoration, and they have an antinociceptive effect. So it facilitates respiration in general, and camphene helps with cineol, and there is an increased effect. This cartoon I really like. This is a classroom, and this microbe is the teacher, and let's say you left a nose at 1 o'clock p.m. and when you reach a man which is 5 meters away, when does the body temperature reach 40 degrees Celsius after a 120 kilometer fast sneeze? Thank you very much for this presentation. Dr. Yeşilada, Professor Yeşilada, you talked about the importance and efficacy of volatile oils or essential oils. We already love them, essential oils. But you have shared with us study results, and this really supports us in our efforts to increase the use of essential oils or volatile oils. For preventive purposes, we used to use them all the time, but evidently they also have a place in fighting against coronavirus, and I'm sure new volatile oils or essential oils will also come further. And now Mr. Demirci will talk about the effects of volatile oils on enzymes. Over to you. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Farma very much for organizing this beautiful event, and I'd like to thank you for your introduction, kind introduction. And together with Tuğçe and Ayper and Erdem, we are assigned as speakers here, and they've made my job easier. We've been working with Professor Üstün for quite a long time. I'm working in the pharmacology department of Anadolu University, but we also have a private enterprise as well. Can you see my slides, by the way? Yes, we can. Yes, we can see your presentation on the screen.
Girişim halen daha endüstrileşemedik.
This is still a new enterprise. We haven't become industrialized as desired yet. but we are doing our best in terms of research. We have a techno city established in our university, and you are doing your job in pharmacies. You are faced with this huge problem of COVID-19 as professionals. And I would also like to commemorate those who died because of COVID-19. Professor Hüsnü Başar led the way in research, but I should also thank pharmacist Esra Karadağ and Senem Karaca, who were part of our team. The speaker before me talked about volatile oils in detail, but in order to get essential oils from herbs, we need technology, distillation systems such as steam distillation, water vapor distillation, and hydrochlorate is also very valuable. And the chemistry is what makes them valuable. Of course, this also brings about a threat of toxicity, even if they are synthetic or natural. But by using them in the correct way, as professionals, we benefit from them a lot. And the inhalation method is very useful when it comes to volatile oils or essential oils. And of course, their safety profile is outlined in the pharmacopy. And there are some carrier substances which can be included. But if you abide by the regulations, the pharmaceutical regulations, the standards, and if you carry out the necessary analyses in advance, you will have no problems. And TUBA is a very competent research center. It was established by Mr. Yeşilada. And we need the appropriate concentrations from pediatric to geriatric forms. We can find several preparations, and aromatherapy has gained popularity recently. How we wish the Ministry of Health responds to the developments, and if we have a suspicion about the quality, well, of course, there might be dose-dependent negative effects if they are not up to the necessary quality. Mr. Yeşilata talked about quorum sensing, anti-biofilm forming effects, etc. But essential oils are volatile, and that's why, even if we don't see this, they can contact with microorganisms, and antimicrobial and antibacterial effects come out of this, are caused by this. And combinations of oils can be made, and this is not ours, but there are some meta-analyses, and in the context of COVID-19, there are not only antibacterial, antimicrobial, and antifungal, but also antiviral, and they also have some synergistic effects. In silico enzyme effects are researched. They're of course valuable research, but first we have to establish a connection with the reality, otherwise they will remain virtual. And their mechanisms of effect or efficacy mechanisms and the modes of action, because there is the lock and key methodology which is involved. We have to take all of these into account, and you can see that we've had studies about several enzyme systems, and the latest one was related with ACE. Oseltamivir is a neuraminidase inhibitor, and the lock key model is used here to explore the codes of the pathology. As in the past, of course, vaccination is an important step, but since the 1960s, we have antiviral agents available. They are not used as much as antifungals or antibiotics. However, in 13 different classes, there are about 90 specific antiviral agents on the market. How does SARS-CoV-2 infect people? I don't need to tell this anymore because detailed information has been given already. Both in the pre and post period, ACE2 expression is very important, and it's one of the important keys in treatment. Therefore, we focused our enzyme studies on ACE2. This is on this is on rosemary oil, and there is up to 80 or 90% of inhibition. We showed this as far as rosemary oil is concerned, and this was published in peer-reviewed journal. Antivirals, apart from antiviral combinations, are also a great weapon for us because we can use these synergistic effect by making a combination, and hydroxychloroquine and remdesivir are combined at different ratios. We can get an antagonistic effect, and at the right concentrations, we can create a synergistic and additive effect. These were shown experimentally, and people rarely use just one drug. There is polypharmacy most of the time, and food supplements are also used, and they have a very complex interaction with one another. And we can have different combinations. We had different combinations, and we published our studies on those combinations. So we can not only combine two synthetic products or two natural products, but also natural products with pharmaceuticals and ketoconazole, chloramphenicol, etc. Can be mixed with daisies or chamomiles. And here I share with you our latest publications. And another combination product is cold mix. We can repurpose an existing product because we already have this on the market, and there are many antimicrobial compounds in it, and it might have a potential against COVID-19, and we tested it focusing on ACE2. Yes, eucalyptus has an effect, and the combination of essential oils, it has more than 80% inhibition effect, and we can show the effect of cineol. We are preparing this article for publication, and a patent application was also submitted. Just diffusing it in the environment allows the effect to manifest itself in 5 minutes. Probably we can. We want to discuss this on the basis of ACE inhibition. Of course, we need human studies, animal studies, because on the pathway there are several complex phenomena involved, and we need to find the answers to all of these questions. And this is a good starting point for such research. We believe that molecular data and pharmacological data will be required to talk about such phenomena. And the 51st International Symposium on Essential Oils will be held here. It will be an online meeting. Unfortunately, it will be online, not physical, due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we would like to invite you to participate, and we will have special conditions for participants from inside the country. Mr. Bashar is the editor of this handbook of essential oils, and it has a new edition out now, and in September in Eskişehir we will have a face-to-face meeting on phytotherapy and complementary medicine. The association was founded at the time of the pandemic. The meeting will be organized in the context of the pandemic. So, as said before by Ms. Moderator, our ultimate aim is to not to catch the disease. Volatile or essential oils are present in the nature so that they cannot be easily caught, or so that they cannot be easily captured. So, prophylaxis is an important area for us, but we still need an evidence base. Thank you very much for your patience. I hope.
Ağzınıza sağlık hocam. Teşekkür ediyoruz. Bu demek oluyor ki şu Anadolu Terapi
Anatolian Phytotherapy Congress will be held in Eskişehir, and you will be the host. So let us take a note of this down in our diary, in our agendas. And please give our greetings to Mr. Bashar, Professor Bashar. So we have two wonderful preventive products. In protecting from the nose, we have Colgate, and in oral protection from the mouth, we have Acto Bliss. As we are here in this meeting, it has just been announced that the measures have been will be slightly relaxed as of the 1st of July. Streptococcus salivarius was discovered by Sir John Hammond. He's connecting from New Zealand, and Professor Malcolm
ağız florası ve korunma yöntemleri birlikte bize bir şekilde yöneteceksiniz diye düşünüyorum.
moderate. I can't see Mr. John Tag yet. Can we see him, by the way?
Evet, Meltem Hocam sizi dinleyelim.
Yes, Meltem Yolunay.
Herkese iyi akşamlar diliyorum. Çok teşekkür ediyorum birbirinden güzel, zengin içerikli sunumlar için.
Thank you very much, and I would like to say good evening. Thank you for your moderation, kind moderation. So with your permission, I would like to declare the start. John Tech is with us.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, you're welcome. Buyurun
Hello.
Meltem Hocam.
Teşekkür ederim. Hello.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
It's my great pleasure to welcome you once more at this marvelous meeting. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am speaking to you quite early in the morning from the south of New Zealand in Dunedin. Now, this is about as far south as you can go on the planet and still get a university education. So my work was largely done at the University of Otago here in Dunedin. What would you like me to talk about? A little bit of the background to the discovery of Bliss K12, the world's first oral probiotic, and maybe its potential role as a master protector of the human species, something grand like that.
Actually, all of them. But if you also, it is okay. I just have a little entrance for this oral microbiome and the health of oral flora, and afterwards we'll just have an amazing moments with your very nice experience with this bacteria, and it's our great pleasure. The discoverer of the bacteria is with us. So if it is okay, if with your permission, I just go on with the oral microbiome. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you again. Thank you. Herkese iyi akşamlar diliyorum.
Good evening, everybody. Distinguished participants, with your permission, I will make an introduction regarding oral microbiome, and then we will listen to the amazing story of Mr. John Tag. It is one of the most important discovery in the world, and it is very exciting to host him today with us. And let me share my screen with you. Well, we come from different disciplines, and that microbiome is my area of interest. It is actually we wanted it a big organization, including every people from different disciplines. So this is a multidisciplinary area. Therefore, altogether, hopefully, we will have a good exchange of knowledge and experience. Microbiota and microbiome, what are they? Microbiota is the flora, the oral flora, and the flora is a recognized term. They are the microorganisms that live with us. And the microbiome, when we say this term, it is also a definition of the biological effect of it. So actually, we have received a lot of data from the human microbiome research, which was completed recently. So actually, a lot of unknown became known. with this research. The genetic researches helped us understand the relation with the diseases. And the microorganisms are the organisms that will live together. They are quite dynamic, like the finger tips, and they don't only have the bacteria, but also the fungus, the virums, and the phloems. So actually, our specific topic is SARS-CoV-2 here. However, there are many things attacking the body, and endothelial involvement is apparent in all of these. The endothelial cells are involved, and therefore it is indeed a systemic disease. I'm talking about COVID. So actually, there is a great relation with the microbiome. The higher the diversity of your microbiome is, the healthier you are. So therefore, we have a lot of researches that show this. And the story starts in the womb of a mother, and the oral microbiome can be really understood well with the help of the researchers. So the story starts with the womb of the mother, and then the delivery happens, then comes the nutrition, and then both the mother and the baby, and it is very effective on the early use of antibiotics, and the entire system and the process is affected by that, and the combination of them results in either health or disease. That is a very important paper. The placental microbiome in the womb of the mother is there are microorganisms in the placenta, and their translocation and colonization is very apparent in the womb of the mother. That is shown by the research. The first colonized bacteria helps the immune programming, and that affects the later stages of the individuals. That's why some of the people are affected severely by the viruses, and some actually not is affected that much. And sometimes the immune response is not enough. So genetic morphisms is actually playing a role in that. The early microbiotic colonization is quite important, and any factor in the mother affects that. All the papers are quite dynamic, because some papers say that it is really growing at early age, but actually neonatal microbiome should be well understood. GI is an entire is a big world in itself. So the first colonized bacteria is affected by many factors and drivers on the side of the mother. And enterobacterial group, Staphylococcus, rather than the Staphylococcus, if they are colonized, staphylococcal colonization actually make people more prone to some things like some skin problems too. And actually, by age, dysbiotic microbiome environment grows. And actually, this lady is over 80 years old, and on the left, the guy is also over 80 years old. And as long as you have a very healthy intestines, also if you have a very healthy oronasal area, then you can really keep yourself young, like these two people. So from now on, we will be talking about the oral region, but the intestines are quite important. The balance in the intestines play a crucial role. And that balance should be supported with friendly bacteria. And otherwise the problem is appearing. If there is a disbalance, then the pre-inflammatory like interferon gamma, interleukin 17, interleukin 23, such and similar inflammatory markers are actually synthesized. So this low-level inflammation should be reversed, or otherwise we will have systemic diseases. Specifically, in the middle of a pandemic, you can be affected even more. And plus, I need to emphasize one thing. SARS-CoV-2 is creating dysbiosis with the involvement of GI. So therefore, they are quite smart, and that is a matter of survival for the bacteria as well, and the viruses, for viruses as well. So any survival, any kind of adaptation is appearing in front of us. So this is metabolic, and the intestine is also playing an important role. If there is a leakage, then the pro-inflammatory effects appear. Now let's come back to our main point. So from placenta to microbiome, the story starts in the womb of the mother, and the oral microbiome, what is it? So after the intestines, the oral microbiome is the second biggest microbiome, and they are quite important. Fungus, bacteria, viruses, there are many different types of them. And together with the mother, that's quite interesting for you, I guess. Oral microbiome has a balance, that's for sure, and the oral lack of hygiene and the balance of the oral biota is quite important and is associated with a good diet, with good nutrition. Oral microbiota is indeed like a factory. That's to be remembered, because our bacteria grow quite quickly. In minutes, they grow, and billions of bacteria live in the oral cavity. And don't forget that we share a world. So from now on, I think one thing is going to be quite important for all of us, and that is quite interesting for me. I am really interested in such papers. Oral microbiome is effective on the development of the core microbiome of the fetus, of the baby. Placental microbiome and the oral microbiome of the mother have similarities. What does that mean? The oral microbiome colonization in the mother is actually playing a great role in the development of the core microbiome in the placenta, in the baby. So streptococcal species are quite important in the development of these microbiomes. So the healthy microbiome of mother is quite closely associated with the growth of with the development of the core microbiome of the baby. So that is not only apparent in normal people, but also in pregnant women, in obese people. So therefore, the oral health is quite important, specifically if you are a pregnant individual. So we are going to talk about that much. I like this topic a lot. It's my area of interest. Probiotics are quite important, and they give us good support. Gradually, they support us, and as long as they are managed quite well, they can give us a great help. They can even prevent the diseases. So that's why they have a great print on us. So what about the situation and the colonization in the oral cavity? We have a lot of types, as you see in this list. These are special groups, and the colonizations are shown by month. It starts with the delivery, specifically the salivarius. They have early colonization, and then come the sanguinis and the mutans. So salivarius is very important because it has early colonization, and they play an important role in the oral microbiome of the humankind. Therefore, what do all these do? How do they support the immune response? And how do they help the release of important things? So there are many researches about that. And there are different Streptococcus types. And among the ones with early colonization, indeed, on the tongue, so in the tonsillis, in the saliva, there are types colonized. Also in the surface of the teeth, there are colonization. Mitis, salivarius, and mitis. As you see, in the oral cavity, salivarius and mitis are quite are the main actors. And they are very important. That's why we have a great discovery, salivarius, and in probiotics, we will be talking about that more and more, and we need to learn the truths about that. A probiotic bacterium have a strain code. Unless it has a strain code, you cannot really define it entirely and totally. Therefore, the strain code is required because it defines how we are immune, and it shows what it does and what it doesn't do. Actually, and the K12 is a very special bacteria, and we need to learn the truths about it. So with your permission, I will give the floor, and that is a very important story. I think that you will like it, and I would like to invite Kim to our program, Professor Peck.
Yes, now I can.
Yes, the most exciting moments now. We just want to hear from you. How do you discover this bacteria, and what do you want to say about this bacteria? Would you please tell your story?
Thank you very much. Well, it's very nice to be invited. I appreciate the opportunity always to talk about my friends, my microbial friends. Can you see me?
Yes, of course. We can see you and hear you properly. No problem.
Sizi hem görebiliyoruz.
Okay.
Güzel duyabiliyoruz. Sizi.
That's good. No, I'm okay now. My story, and as relates to the bacteria, goes back quite a long time now. Maybe 60 years ago, I had an encounter of the wrong kind with this guy. I don't know if you can. I can't see my screen, but this is Streptococcus Pyogenes. Streptococcus Pyogenes assaulted me, and I had a sore throat that developed into rheumatic fever. Now, this happens to tens of thousands of children worldwide, and a consequence of getting rheumatic fever is that you have to be put onto penicillin prophylaxis for many years. So all through my teenage years, from the age of 12 through to the early 20s, I had to take penicillin daily. Didn't much care for that, to be taking penicillin every day. It oozed out of my every pore, and I smelt like a mushroom. Not cool at all for a teenager to go through their critical years smelling like a fungus. I thought there's got to be a better way to stop Streptococcus pyogenes infections. And the magic moment for me was a lecture at Melbourne University that I was attending. And Dr. Rose Mushin, one of the teachers there, had just come back from a study leave where she had learnt about microbial interference, using microorganisms to fight other microorganisms. But her interest was largely in the gut and intestinal probiotics. My interest, my curiosity was tweaked at that point. It was, if you like, a eureka moment. I thought, I wonder if I could find a microorganism for the oral cavity that would do battle against Streptococcus pyogenes. And so really my life was changed at that point. I knew what I must do. I must try to find an oral probiotic to do battle with Streptococcus pyogenes. I had the chance to go to the United States for a study in the University of Minnesota with a Professor Lewis Wanamaker, and he encouraged me in this quest to find something to do battle with pyogenes. My attention became focused on oral microorganisms with the capability of producing bliss. Now, bliss is a happy little acronym, if you like, for bacteriocin-like inhibitory substances. And these bliss molecules are molecules produced by bacteria in nature to do battle with other competitor bacteria. So many bacteria, in fact, most bacteria will produce these bliss molecules, but I was interested in trying to find a harmless bacterium that produced bliss molecules that would suppress the growth of Streptococcus pyogenes. I got a job here at the University of Otago in Dunedin, and that's where my quest for a competitor for Strep pyogenes really developed in earnest. What I found was that on the surface of the tongue, there were large populations in most people of the species Streptococcus salivarius. I was looking at school children, and in the series of about 200 school children, one organism caught my attention, and it was a Streptococcus salivarius K12. K12 because it came actually from a child at a school called Kaikarai School, and this child was number 12 in that series. So that is the origins of the term Streptococcus salivarius K12, and bliss K12 was the bacteriocin-like inhibitory substance produced by this organism that was very active against Streptococcus pyogenes. So I don't know if you can see in the background.
Very cute, very nice. We all see.
So Streptococcus salivarius K12 became very important to me. And I had some discussions with some entrepreneurs here in Dunedin about my discovery. They got quite excited about it. And about the year 2000, the company Bliss Technologies was launched. This is the world's first probiotic company specializing in the development of oral probiotics. So in the year 2000, Bliss salivarius K12 came to market. And since then, there have been many millions and millions of doses of Bliss K12 worldwide. And really the importance of Strep salivarius is that it resides on the surface of the tongue And that really is the entry portal for many microorganisms into the human body. So it seemed to me that it was very useful to have a protector organism positioned right there in the critical part of the oral cavity, large populations established on the tongue, producing this anti-competitor molecule that was active against Strep pyogenes, but not just Strep pyogenes. Also, we have discovered against various other bacteria and also against fungi. It has quite good activity against Candida albicans. So as time has gone on, more and more discoveries have been made relating to Strep salivarius K12 to show that it really is quite a useful probiotic to introduce right throughout your life. So from the very first days of your life, the newborn child can be protected against group B strep infections by Strep salivarius K12. And the best way to protect the newborn child is to colonize the mother. And then the mother will, when she kisses and coddles her baby, will naturally transfer through her saliva to the baby K12, and K12 populations can be established very early on in life. And then if you maintain those populations by taking the product, and the product has been developed and in various formats, as powder formats, as lozenge formats. A typical lozenge, I guess, of Bliss K12 is about 1 billion colony forming units. So you're probably familiar with the expression, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Well, I think now 1 billion K12 a day keeps the doctor away is probably a nice follow-up to the popularity of apples to help maintain good health in humans. So essentially that is the story, that is the background. It started with me with a personal quest to find a defender-friendly microorganism that would do battle right at the entry point of Streptococcus Pyogenes into the oral cavity to help protect young children against Strep Pyogenes sore throat and then sequelae of rheumatic fever. And since then, this microorganism, Bliss K12, has been found to have various alternative applications right throughout the health, through the lifetime of the human being. And even mentioned earlier on in this session, there was a report of some of the studies in Italy that showed that children who were using Bactobliss K12 seemed to have a lower occurrence of development of immune responses to COVID. So there is opportunities because K12 not only will stay on the surface of the tongue, it seems that it will naturally pass into the, of course, into the intestinal tract, where you can build up populations there, and also into the lungs, into the human lungs. And so having this Bliss producing salivarius stationed at various critical points of the human body offers the opportunity really and the prospect of protection against not only Strep pyogenes, and that was the original mission, but also against fungi, Candida albicans, and potentially against viral infections. Every time you take a lozenge, and what I do, I make sure I take a lozenge a day. Right at the end of the day is the best time to take it, because then the dilution effect of your saliva when you take the lozenge and is less than at other times of the day. So every day after I brush my teeth and before I say my prayers and go to bed, I will take a lozenge of Bliss K12 what that does immediately, it gives a little bit of a boost of gamma interferon levels in saliva. There's studies that show that an immediate response to taking some K12 cells is that little boost in gamma interferon, and it can also have an effect sequentially as you take more K12 of on antiviral activity from dampening the pro-inflammatory response, if you like, mediated by NF-kappa beta. So there are various ways that the microorganism K12 can benefit, not only through its production of bliss molecules to directly fight the pathogens, but also through its interaction with the immune system. So that's where we stand at the moment. The company here, Bliss, based in Dunedin, is developing new probiotics. One that followed shortly after K12 was M18, and Bliss M18 has been found to have not only activity against Strep Pyogenes, but also activity against many of the bacteria involved in dental caries. So that was the second of the probiotics developed by the company. We are now researching alternative probiotics, mostly focused on the mouth, but one that just very recently came to market was a skin probiotic. So the sky's the limit as far as the potential applications of probiotics to benefit humans, and not just humans, other animals. There are many opportunities for probiotic interventions and maintenance of health in anyone who has a need for increased protection within their microbiota. I think I should probably stop there in case there are any questions, or if there's anything else you would like me to follow up on. I'm happy to respond.
It was great.
I should just end perhaps with the wish for all who are listening. May the bliss be forever with you.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll just have all the questions at the end of the meeting. I know there will be lots of questions to you, but just here, I'd like to ask you a question. As the oral microbiome and the placental microbiome resembles each other, do you recommend the usage to pregnants this probiotic?
In pregnancy, yes. That's an ideal time really to use Bliss K12 for pregnant women, especially in the last trimester of pregnancy, to make sure they are well colonized with Bliss K12, because they will naturally transfer the organism to the baby. And there's also probably the prospect of the organism providing and colonizing within the placental region and providing direct protection there against group B Streptococcus. There is study going on at the moment in Canada looking at the role of Bliss K12 in pregnant women in helping to protect against group B strep infection.
This is so exciting for me as well. This protection and prevention, some diseases and early colonizers, as they just pass through at the core microbiota. This part is so exciting, pregnants to use this oral probiotic. Thank you so much, Professor Ted. But again, I'd like to invite you to the points that just I was talking about this probiotics and the COVID and health and disease conditions. Just a little break, and if you permit, I just go through my speech.
Thank you, Mr. John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll just invite you again. Evet, çok hakikaten burası çok heyecan verici. Yani kendi hikayesi
Yes,
ve
this part is really very exciting because Dr. Tag talked about his own infection, and it's really very impressive, isn't it? So it is. It is really a very impressive story, and it's very evidence-based. And we should also underline that in probiotics, of course, we will make a reminder of that. Without the genus, species, and strain code, we can never accept any microorganism. And the strain code here is K12. Otherwise, it is found in the normal flora. But K12 is only isolated from a healthy group of people, and it should also, of course, be isolated from human beings. Now, I will continue with my own presentation.
Bilis faktörü bu Salivarius'un insandaki ağız florasının modülasyonu ve modülatör olarak çalışması ile ilgili.
So it works as a modulator. The level of proof is also quite high. And it is effective on, for example, the interleukin 8 and NF or TNFA. The bacteria actually uses the bliss. I will show you that one specifically. It is the bacteriocin-like inhibitory substances, bliss. This is an antibiotic, and it is from the part of A2 and B of salivarisin. It is an antimicrobial peptide indeed, and it has a modulation effect, and the protection comes from that. As mentioned, pathobuoyant microbiome does not play the only role here. Oral fungal colonization is prevented. The fungal colonization is prevented too. So Salivarius K12 actually has an effect through stimulation of the endothelial cell. There are, for example, normal response and acquired response. So the immune response is regulated. So that is the main logic behind it. Salivarius K12. So Salivarius K12 actually has a very hitting effect on actually Streptococcus Pyogenes. So the K12 is actually shows its effect mostly in such and similar researches. So on the other hand, we also have the effect on the dental actually cavities. So how does it work? That is shown here. So we understood the mechanism, that's quite clear. But how are we going to be protected from the diseases? And how is the relation between the oral cavity and the health of it and the diseases? Actually, as you know, the effect is especially significant on certain issues. The protection effect is proven in many researches, and A2 and B play an important role, and interleukin cytokines and nuclear factor kappa B is decreased. One thing should be remembered. A group beta hemolytic streptococcus infections and its complications are quite frequent. We are dealing with the microbiome analysis and then the modulation. What we see is that early stage antibiotic use and the use by the mother creates dysbiotic microbiome. In the later stages, inflammatory intestinal diseases go with the chronic diseases, and then the people prone to more diseases afterward. And not everything is about microorganisms, that's for sure. We have genes too, and we have gene polymorphism regulating the immune system. Bacterium epigenetically regulates the immune response. Let's come back to our issue. If A group beta hemolytic streptococcus infections or other infections. In those infections, if we have to use antibiotics quite frequently, then the dysbiotic microbiomes will become a problem for us. Therefore, such and similar protective probiotics are very supportive, but they have a severe modulation effect, and they decrease the use of antibiotics. That is the strength of them. The decrease in the use of antibiotics, dysbiotic microbiome, and chronic inflammation actually is expected to decrease. So when the antibiotic is used, once you use the antibiotic, the microorganisms become less diverse. So the ratio is distorted. So how can we keep this area more protected and healthy? That's actually need to be taken into account. So the use of many important agents are quite important here. So by the way, there are many questions coming, and probably Ms. Adile is going to manage the questions. We are going to receive as many questions as possible. Don't worry about that. So in the recurrent infections, the use of prophylactic is shown to be very highly proven in the researches, and there are different areas of effect. One, it recovers health, and second, it prevents the use of antibiotics. Acute otitis media in pharyngotontilis and in other types of inflammatory problems, the K12 is also quite protective. And in the recurrent ones, also in non-recurrent ones, this is a retrospective study, and also meta-analysis show the protective aspect of it. So regarding discovery of the bacterium, we have a long time passed over its discovery. That's why we have seen a lot of researches proving the effect of it. We have controlled studies, and we have also double-blind studies. So the Salivarius K12 has a very high level of proof. And in recurrent respiratory diseases, in the prevention of all such diseases, the level of proof is also very high. Together with COVID, we are coming down to the lower respiratory system, and as mentioned by Teg, oral microbiome and the lung microbiota are similar to one another. That's for sure. The researchers show that as well. Oral microbiome and lung microbiome are quite resembling, actually. So if you are quite interested, you can check this out. That is a specific syndrome, a PFAPA, and actually that is also supported by Salivarius K12. So the severity is actually lowered with the help of that bacteria. So let's continue. Okay, it protects the health, but how? It is quite strong. It has a very, as long as you have the observation, you will see that it has a very quick effect. And as you know, the patients would like to recover as quickly as possible. They would like to go back to normal as quickly as possible. That's why this bacterium, as long as it is supported with this probiotic, the people can recover their health more quickly. So regarding halitosis, it is effective as well. So there are different types of techniques to use that. For example, brushing your tongue and the oral hygiene before getting to bed, before going to bed, and hepatobio and the and there are some types, there are some special methods of preparing the oral cavity before using it. And the bacteria group shown here are associated with systemic diseases, specifically with autoimmune immune diseases, cardiovascular diseases, some types of metabolic diseases. So the oral colonization are playing an important role. So the oral microbiome is actually reserving the bacteria, which will lead to many different diseases. So the oral cavity protection is also an important step for the preventive health.
Eskiden biz bir füzobakteriyum kolorektal kanserde bir onun adı geçerdi ama şimdi birçok konu başlığında
in many different okay, there are different types of groups defined. Streptococcus pneumonia is shown to be effective on different types. Or in pancreatic cancers, by the way, they are becoming more common. Leptotrichia, from Aggregatia bacter, Actinomyces thermocomitans. These are what is our aim? The lowering the colonization of all these, because that is the main aim of the use of the probiotics. We want them to be colonized. As long as they are strongly colonized, they will cover the area, and then with their releases, they are going to actually support the protective cytokines. So in different diseases, different bacteria are going to be helpful. For example, in Alzheimer's, gingivitis is showing an association. In cardiovascular diseases, for example, gingivitis, endothelial, Volatile intermedia, these are different types of bacteria showing themselves. In that respect, how are we going to manage this side, and how can we replace it with the friendly bacteria? That is the main domain to research about. The autoimmune disease is actually increased. Rheumatoid arthritis, for example, and different autoimmune diseases, and there are many different diseases can be defined right now. There is an increase, so very comfortably the immune response can be triggered, stimulated. While stimulating the immune response, that is quite interesting for many people. How much should I stimulate it? Because as long as for example, if I overstimulate it, is it a problem? Is it a risk for the people? So specifically for COVID, I can tell you that what happened in the oral area after COVID. Of course, the previous speakers showed us important information, and I will give you a list of other information For example, pharyngeal microbiota, and lung microbiota and oral microbiota, they are all similar to one another. That's why the oral cavity is quite important for the protection. Pharyngeal microbiota is becoming dysbiotic by age. And dysbiotic change happens. In that respect, people can have it more severely. And these are some of the papers published in Lancet. By the way, those papers are very serious. Therefore, they should be taken into account. That paper has been used a lot. Mr. Alper also showed it before. So this is a possible probiotic. It is probiotic, but why is it probiotic? For COVID-19, it improves oral and lung microbiota. And this paper shows how it does it. So interferon gamma increases, interleukin 8 is decreasing, and that is the effect. And the lung microbiota and the oral microbiota are similar to each other, and that's why it is also an interesting feature in terms of COVID-19. So why should we make use of that? Why in the middle of a pandemic we can make the use of an oral probiotic? So that is a different side. The oral hygiene and lung infection and their association, their close association is shown in many researches as well. So to summarize, the oral the dominant types in the oral cavity can support our health. However, if the unfriendly ones appear more in the oral cavity, and this story starts in the womb of the mother, we are going to speak more about the pregnancy. The oral microbiome should be supported quite well, specifically for the pregnant women, because the baby placental microbiome is similar to the oral microbiome of the mother. That association is also quite important. So we are in the middle of pandemic, and the oral flora and the health of the oral flora is an important topic that should be taken seriously. Of course, we have passed the most difficult part of this pandemic, but I also think that we are, in the viral trajectory. So actually the entire world are in the viral path right now. And that is a matter of survival. So the variation will also appear on their side, and we will also protect ourselves as humankind. So this is a matter of survival. So the future projections, let's ask to Mr. Tag, and there are many questions asked.
Buyurun. Nasıl yapalım?
Bir Doktor Hakan Ulucan'ın bir sorusu var.
Mr. Hakan Uluca has a question about penicillin. Would you like to ask this question, penicillin injections? Would you like me to read the question, by the way, or can you see that, Miss Meltem? Where is it, the question? Where is the question, by the way?
Attend diye bir isimle.
Herhalde
Thanks for the night. That's a very inspiring.
Evet.
Story John, penicillin devam ediyor.
Tamam, ben gördüm. İzninizle aktarayım soruyu. Aha, okay.
Lütfen. Onu rica edeceğim.
Tabii. Professor Tag, would you...
Hello.
Hello again. Could you please answer a question? There's a question from the audience. It's like that penicillin injections were also our nightmares in Turkey for a long, long time. That's an amazing discovery, really. You know, our genomes have many viral sequences. Do you have any experience about viral microbiome? I think viral microbiome has mountains of answers to many unanswered questions about many diseases. Dr. Hakan Ulucan asked the question.
It's not something I can really comment upon. I have no personal experience or knowledge that would shed light on that, I don't think. So it's unfortunately can't comment on that.
Okay. Okay, of course, it is something different. Viral genome is lots of difference, have lots of differences. Okay, so
yes.
actually...
Bir soru daha var. Yine John Tag.
There is one more question for Dr. John Tag. When you use it daily, how about using it for a lifetime? Or can we use it without any should we use it intermittently or continuously?
Ask a question like that. What do you actually suggest us for the usage of this probiotic? Will we use it every night, or what is the period for using this probiotic? What do you suggest for that?
Yes, well, it's quite a unique probiotic. Streptococcus salivarius is found naturally only in humans, so it's very exquisitely adapted to humans. And K12 is supercharged. It has, because of its ability to produce bliss molecules, these bliss molecules are encoded by a megaplasmid inside of the cell. And this is the real weaponry, if you like, of Strep salivarius K12, having this megaplasmid. But it's quite energetically demanding for K12 to produce all of the bliss molecules. So if there is not a challenge for it, because the reason it produces bliss is to maintain its own population in its own only possible home, the human oral cavity. That's the primary home of it. So it will produce these bacteriocin or bliss molecules to help maintain its own population. If it's not being challenged, then it will slowly stop producing those molecules. And so we have to really, to get optimal protection from K12 and to maintain good population levels, it seems important really to take it daily. This is what I do. I will use it 1 tablet a day. As I mentioned right at the beginning, my motto now is a tablet a day to keep the doctor away, just to maintain optimal levels of this organism on my tongue. Some people will colonize much easier than others, and potentially they may not need to take 1 a day until we develop a simple test to actually allow people to determine maybe themselves what is the level of my colonization. Then I think it's safest, if you're really feeling in a vulnerable situation, to take a tablet a day. And really, I recommend taking it last thing in the day, as I sort of mentioned before, because the circadian rhythm, the rate of salivation in your oral cavity, is lowest in the night hours. So if you put your load of K12 into the oral cavity just before retiring at night, then there's less of a washout effect of the probiotic cells. So that's my best recommendation. If you want to be most effectively colonized, then just to take a lozenge a day.
Okay, instead of an apple. Okay. Instead of an apple.
Meltem Hanım, bir soru daha var size.
There is one more question to you, Meltem, or to Miss Iper. After Bacto-Bliss in my son, aged 8, around the mouth, there were impetigo-like lesions they developed, actually. Do you have any experience about this? Miss Iper, would you like to respond to this?
Yani tabii ki şöyle bir şey
Yes.
görmedim açıkçası.
I did not see such a thing myself. However, it might have happened together with an infection of Impetigo. It might have developed. That is the only explanation I can think of. It might have coincided with an Impetigo infection.
Olarak mikrobiyomla
Well,
vaka yönetimi yapıyorum.
I am managing cases and I haven't seen this and it could just on the contrary prevent impetigo. So I think it must have coincided with an impetigo infection. That's all that I can say as an explanation. I've not seen anything like this in the literature or myself in my own cases. Okay, there is one more question. Can we start using Bactoblis in the active period of a COVID infection? Unfortunately, we could not get the question. We have had a real difficulty hearing the speaker.
Ama çok kesik kesik geliyor ses.
I couldn't get your question, the speaker says. Okay, I'm asking it again. Can Bactoblis be used in the active period of the COVID infection? And in the COVID positive period, how can it be used? I am using it, and in order to support the oropharyngeal flora, it will provide us with advantages. There are some agents we use in the management of COVID, and they might cause side effects, and the tolerance capacity of the patient may decline. So we need a sound microbiota. In my routine practice, I always give a probiotic support to my patients, and I use Bliss very much in my own practice. And let me tell you my own experience as a doctor. I have had more than 10,000 patients, and I use it in my own active protection. I have a 7-year-old son. When I come home from the hospital, it's important for me to safeguard my loved ones. And since March, when the mutations arrived, I have always kept this molecule at home available. And of course, I continue with preventive measures, and I'm very happy with this, and I have not had any infection attacks. This means it actively works, and I use it myself, and I'm still using it. Okay, Meltem, this is a question for you. Could the fructose in Bactoblis harm gut flora? No, simply no. And this is a question for Ms. Ayper. Can 12-year-olds be vaccinated? Is this appropriate? Well, it's done in the US, in Canada, and it will shortly start in Europe.
Aşının sınırı 16 yaş.
Actually, the limit for BioNTech vaccine is 16, and we don't have approvals at the moment in Turkey for that. I don't think the approvals will come before autumn in Turkey. And we don't have so many vaccines available in Turkey anyway. And if you pay attention, they first vaccinated about the age group about 18. And in Israel, they vaccinated 16 to 18-year-olds, and it was very successful. And we have a high population in Turkey who are below 16, but I think it would be much more reasonable to vaccinate the higher age group and then children or teenagers. And we don't have so many vaccines in Turkey anyway. After 2 doses of vaccine, after 6 months, they say that the immunity drops and revaccination is required. This is the information available. In order to decide on a third booster dose, should we first check our antibodies? Well, we don't use antibodies as a preventive test. After vaccination and due to underlying diseases, some people might have an excessive reaction to vaccines, even to Sinovac, which does not contain live viruses. Of course, the rates are low. However, if the patient has had an infection attack after the first dose, or if was vaccinated after an infection, there is a cumulative response, both in cellular and humoral immunity. The third dose or the booster dose, is it a must for everybody? This is the question. First of all, we should always look at the risk groups, who are people in the health sector, staff who are in close contact with sick people, and people with high comorbidities. So, of course, this is something that is talked about all around the world. They say that a booster dose may be given, but these are theories. So, on top of an inactive vaccine, we could have an mRNA vaccine, but there are no evidence-based studies published on those yet. Thank you. Mr. Yeşilada, here is a question
Erdem
from
Hocama,
me.
Fatih Hocam ikisi de
Or
cevaplayabilir.
Mr. Fatih, you could also answer this question.
Özellikle kekik konusunda
concerning oregano,
ince çizgi var
there
toksitesiyle
is
ilgili.
a thin line when it comes to its toxicity. What do you think about this? What is your opinion?
Çizgi var.
I couldn't get your question fully, the speaker says.
Yağda çok ince bir çizgide.
As far as the oregano essential oil is concerned, some people say it's toxic. Well, of course, it's a matter of dosing. Yes, oregano, 3.5 mLs is lethal. That's for sure. So it should be used at a very low dilution. And it can also be used as a gargle.
Hocam bazı kullanımlarda
and in some forms of usage, they say it causes allergic reactions, and during the COVID-19 process, they thought that it was due to the dose effect, and it increases blood pressure. For those who have high blood pressure, we do not recommend oregano oil. But of course, if you buy it from shops on the street, you won't find any volatile oils in them. We can't hear the speaker. We are sorry. We couldn't get your question, the speaker says. Adile Hanım, we could not hear you. No.
Evet.
There are decent producers as well.
Sonlandırıyoruz ve herkese teşekkür ediyorum. Buyurun Meltem Hocam.
That is the end of this part. Now I'd like to go on with the future of oral probiotics and what awaits us in the upcoming period.
Koyabilir miyim?
Oh, by the way, I'd like to ask one more question. What about antibiotics?
Kullanılacak mı?
Will they be used or will they replace antibiotics in the near future? This will be my own personal opinion, and let's then ask this to Dr. John Tag. The standardization of antibiotics have not been complete yet. We need some phase studies. But first we should ask the person who discovered it. May I ask it with your permission? Professor Tag.
May I ask you a question about antibiotics?
Yes.
Can we use them instead of antibiotics? What do you think for that?
It's a very good question. And I think the day could come when they will have application just directly like an antibiotic. The problem at the moment is that they are quite difficult to synthesize, and purification is also quite onerous, quite difficult. So to obtain large quantities for more widespread application as a purified product will take quite a bit more development of technology, I believe. Not impossible. And niacin, which is the prototype of the antibiotics, has already some limited application directly as an antibiotic. So niacin is sort of leading the way, I suppose, to show that it could potentially be done. But for many of the antibiotics, I think the day is still quite some way off that we will have sufficient quantities to use directly as an antibiotic. I think for the time being, the best approach is to let the bacteria be the producers on site in our body, but sometime in the future, I think there will be other opportunities to develop and apply them directly.
So currently, we just use the producer of these antibiotics, isn't it? Producer of these and the bacteria itself. Okay, thank you so much. Ben izninizle oral probiyotikler ve gelecekte bizi acaba bu grupta neler bekliyor ve nasıl etkileri olacak, bizi destekleyecek, bunu aktarmaya çalışacağım. Şimdi hatırlatmak için, ama ben bunu sunumlarımda hep söylüyorum. 1-2 slaytım var, hep söylüyorum. Bu tanımlamaları biz yapmadık değerli katılımcılar. Bunlar 2002 yılında Birleşmiş Milletler Gıda ve Tarım Örgütü ve Dünya Sağlık Örgütü tarafından yapılan tanımlamalar.
These definitions were made by the World Health Organization, and they are very seriously made definitions. Bacteria, apart from these, cannot be defined as probiotics, and probiotics in the host provide a health benefit. They are live organisms, so they have to support the immune system. And normally in Turkey, you have to get a permission from the Ministry of Agriculture and Forests. And then a regulation was made. So these microorganisms have to be live, and when taken in the necessary amounts, they have to produce health benefits, and they have to ensure the necessary colonization figures. So nobody, under no condition, should forget this. The genus, species, and strain code has to be there. Otherwise, they cannot be taken as probiotics. And when we carried out a study, we sent invitation letters to the owners of all products. In 2019, the number was around 140, and only half of them had a strain code. A bacteria which doesn't have a strain code. For example, Lactobacillus rhamnosus, you can obtain it from the skin and use it right away if it was so easy, but that's not the case. Scientifically, their specific effects can only be shown technically with the strain code, and you should show that they go without being degraded by the stomach acid, etc. So there have to be some steps that you should go through. For example, it should influence the cytokine profile. It should reduce the effect of food allergens, and it should, for example, produce a bacteriocin-like effect and epithelial mucin production, and it should strengthen the gut barrier, etc. It has to have some specific effects, and it's a serious business, and these products are serious products. Yes, they are supplements, however, they are biologically alive, and you're taking in a live organism. In children, in COVID-19, the effect of oral probiotics were shown in studies, and as explained in clinical experiences, in preventing the colonization of pathobiomes, they are effective, and the oral microbiota has similarities with the lung microbiota. And the more defense you have here, the more defense you will have in the lungs. And as far as next generation probiotics are concerned, new generation probiotics are planned to form with one bacteria, and they have to be produced as meticulously as pharmaceuticals. And a single bacteria would make follow-up easier. So modulation is not possible with a long list of bacteria. And when we come to salivarius, it is safely colonized. What do the latest publications tell us from 2020? In the saliva microbiome and the nasopharyngeal in the nasopharyngeal biome, it was shown to have a safe colonization preventing pathobionts. And I asked Dr. Tagg's opinion on this, and its use in pregnant women will be much more important, because the healthier the microbiome of the oral microbiome of the mother, the healthier the baby will be. Therefore, it's very important for mothers to use them in pregnancy.
Atıf vererek oral probiyotiklerle ilgili izninizle kapatacağım. Burada probiyotik olarak, yani probiyotik olarak Streptococcus pyogenes bu otitis media'daki
otitis media inhibition is shown in this research, and the radiation-induced oral mucositis that is a reference to pathogenesis, and what is the effect of the probiotics. So as you see, dysbiosis is not only an issue for the intestines, but also in the oral cavity. Well, when you work with the cases, specifically the patients on chemotherapy are special groups, whether intestines or oral cavity, probiotics are quite important. I think, personally speaking, intestinal probiotics are quite special, and the oral probiotics as well, specifically for cancer patients. As we showed it before, oral health is protecting you against different viruses, as we see it in this very pandemic. What is the ideal? Well, I would like to finish it with a principle. Probiotics, specifically in terms of intestines, it should be produced with microbiome analysis. modulation should be evidence-based. Only this way the results will be better. This is the Turkish probiotic guide, and the level of evidence, as in the Canada guideline, the level of evidence have different stages, as you have seen in the previous slide. But when you click on it, the claimed evidence-based area of use are shown, are listed by reference. So that is the only definition. We know that for intestines and for oral probiotics, the oral probiotics will be even stronger, so they will evolve more strongly. So these definitions are evidence-based clinical use. Probiotics and the interesting side of the probiotics are emphasized. So what can we say to close? Actually, Stradivarius K12 is an oral probiotic, and it has a special place in tonsillitis specifically, and in terms of the prevention of lung infections, it plays an important role. Oral probiotics are promising to protect the health. Thank you very much for your kind attention. And with your permission, can I give the floor to John Tech, Ms. Adile? Can we give the floor? What do you think about oral probiotics?
Future aspects. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello. What do you think about the future aspects of oral probiotics?
The future aspects of
oral probiotics. What do you think in future? What about the power of these oral probiotics? What about the usage? What about
the future is wide open now, and I think the applications for probiotics will just continue to escalate, not only for humans, but for other animals as well. We are just at the very beginning, I think, of knowledge of the possibilities for probiotic interventions and for probiotic as a starting basis for life. So I think really from the very first days of life, people will be aware of the possibilities of controlling that massive contribution to our own lives, and that is the microbial contribution by specific modulation with directed probiotics. So I think the future is exciting. We have many opportunities, many golden opportunities, not only from the gut, that's where it all started, but now with a big focus on the oral cavity and the next step to the skin. I think eventually probiotics will have inroads, if you like, for all aspects of human intervention in modulation of disease by using probiotics and protection against a wide range, not only of bacterial infections, but also virus and fungal infections. So it's an exciting time, I think, for those of us who have an interest in the field of probiotics. And I think for me, I'm particularly interested in the bliss-producing probiotics, those that are supercharged, if you like, with a capability of directed competition with other organisms. So I always like to leave people that I'm talking to with with the thought, may the bliss be forever with you.
Okay. Yes, thank you so much. So the last verse was so exciting and just emphasizing something. Okay, thank you so much. But you are also just underlying the fungal pathogens as well. Prevention for the fungi and fungal pathobionts, isn't it? It is also important. I understand for your emphasizing this part.
Yes, I think that's a bit of a surprise, because many of us thought that the bacteria would just be viewing other bacteria as their competitors. But I think many fungi have really intervened within the territory that bacteria like to inhabit. And so during the course of bacterial evolution and the evolution of these anti-competitor molecules, note has been taken of the fact that the fungi need to be defended against as well. And that's why some bacteria have taken on board and have adapted to compete with some of the fungi that occupy or try to occupy some of their ecological space.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. It was great for us to join with you and have this chance in this meeting. Thank you so much. I just want to give the verse to moderator.
Thank you very much. Çok teşekkür ediyorum.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank you all. I think this evening's meeting was quite like a 3-day Congress. So, well, we will repeat it definitely, because each and every speech was a great lecture for all of us. John Tech, Ms. Matan, thank you very much. Mr. Erdem, thank you to you as well. For your works, Mr. Atar, thank you very much. Tuğçe, thank you to you. Fatih, thank you to you as well. Meryem, Ena Farma, and Mr. Hasan Kartal, thank you very much for this amazing event. And I would like to also thank to the audience for their great patience and attention. I would like to thank you all. Hope to see you again. Thank you for the effort.
İyi akşamlar.
Çok teşekkür ederiz.
Çok teşekkür
İyi
ederim.
akşamlar.
Sağ
Sağ olun.
Sağ olun.
Sağ olun.
Teşekkürler. Good night.
Teşekkürler Fatih Hocam.
Good night.
Sağ olun. Teşekkürler.
Akşamlar.
Thank you.
Oh, bye bye John.
Great job. Appreciations.
Ya süperdi. Çok teşekkürler. İyi akşamlar.
İyi akşamlar. Çok teşekkürler.